Mukilteo. My name is Louis Harris. I am the council president here in Mukilteo on the city council. Thank you, I appreciate that. But this is not about me. This is about our lovely members of the 21st legislative delegation who is at the stage before you. So I'm going to really quickly introduce them. And then I'm going to let y'all know some ground rules and kind of know where, you know, the amenities are here in the lovely Kamiak auditorium. And then we'll have them get started in telling you all about the legislative session, some of the things they're working on, and then we'll definitely take some questions. So I do want to make sure you all know, if you have any questions, like right off the bat, there are question cards that the legislative assistants around the auditorium have. So if you have something burning desire right now, go ahead and raise your hand and they'll get you a comment card. And then also, they will take your comment card, they're gonna sift through the comments, and then we're gonna do a question and answer period, okay? And so any legislative assistant who sees a hand up, please go ahead and do that. All right, so we do have our 21st legislative delegation. First up, we have Representative Strom, Peterson, who just so happens to be the chair of that housing committee in the legislature. Can we give him a hand of applause? Next, you have Representative Lillian Ortiz-Self, who is the majority caucus chair in the House. And then last but not least, we have Senator Marko Liias, who is the chair of transportation. So you have to all three of them. And our final board member happens to be in the 21st legislative district. Okay, so if you didn't see as you came into the building, the restrooms are out in the foyer area. There are a couple of signs out there, I think, pointing in the direction, but the reality is to just go out and then take a left beyond the glass doors. Outside of that, I talked about questions, and I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. Oh, I do wanna say this. Thank you all for coming to Mukilteo again. I want to say that, you know, being in politics, you know, you have to deal with all sorts of stuff. But my point is that I'd love for everybody to have a respectful conversation, respect our legislators, and respect the work that's being done. If you have a disagreement, we can certainly find space and time to talk about that. But we will definitely get to everybody's questions and comments. So thank you all for listening. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to, I think, Marko first. Senator Liias, excuse me.
There we go. Thank you very much, Louis. Round of applause to our MC for being here. We also have a lot of our local elected official partners. I see fire commissioners and school board members and city council members and even a mayor. If you're a local elected official, will you just stand up and let's give a round of applause to these amazing partners. Yes, thank you so much. I see Lynnwood, I see Edmonds, I see Mukilteo, all over the place. These folks are our partners in delivering essential public services in our community, and we're really grateful to each of them. Also for taking time out, as if they don't have enough on their plates to come here is really valuable. I'm Marko Liias, I'm your state senator, and we're here at Kamiak High School, where in the last century I graduated from this fine institution. It is so nice to be back, and it's so nice to be here at home. This is our short 60-day session this year of the legislature, and it has just felt like a whirlwind of activity. So the chance to be here at home, to sleep in my own bed, just feels so nice. So it's a treasure to be with you. We're working on some important issues facing our community, facing the entire state. I look forward to hearing your questions about what more we should be focused on. I want to highlight just 3 key priorities that I'm centering in the work we're doing. The first is ensuring that our kids have a great quality education. As someone that graduated here from Kamiak High School, making sure that we've got a strong public education system is in my DNA, and it's something that I know is important to the state. So we're going to continue to focus on that. In that regard, I have a particular interest in a great program that Mukilteo and Everett Public Schools have been adopting called Ninth Grade Success. We know that students who pass all of their classes in ninth grade are 4 times more likely to graduate high school, and students that run into trouble in ninth grade really get on the wrong pathway to getting into career and onto life. And so we've got some great interventions that Mukilteo and Edmonds have done, or Everett have done, to help our ninth graders be successful. We want to take that statewide. So that's something this year that I'm particularly excited to be working on. I also, as Louis said, as Councilman Berger said, chair our Senate Transportation Committee. So making sure that our infrastructure is in good repair, that it's working well, and getting our iconic ferry system back to what it deserves to be is really important to me, and I'm continuing to work on that. We actually will release our transportation budget proposal just on Tuesday, so help chart some ideas for how we keep moving forward. And then the final issue that I hear over and over again from constituents in email when I'm out in the community is public safety. We need to make sure that we are addressing, you know, an increase we've seen in property crimes, you know, obviously some really unfortunate incidents that are happening in our community around the state. And we need to, thinking about our local partners, the city council members and mayors, make sure that we're empowering our sheriff's office, our local police departments, to have all the tools they need to keep our communities safe. And I just want to particularly thank Chief Andy Lillian. Mukilteo has taken time with me over the interim to help me understand some of the issues that Mukilteo PD is facing. I've also had a chance to meet with the new Chief of Police in Edmonds and hear about some of the challenges they're facing, and of course with our new sheriff, Susanna Johnson. So I'm going to continue to listen to folks here in our community that are focused on keeping us safe and do what we can to give them the resources and the supports to do their job well for all of us. So those are kind of 3 big priorities for me. I look forward to hearing about other issues, and I also want to introduce the very best state representative in the state of Washington, Lillian Ortiz-Self.
He really does that to get to Strom, I hope you all know that.
It's true. It's true.
I have the honor of working with these 2 wonderful men. We work as a team when we are up in Olympia, sharing each other's, taking from each other's strengths, and I'm so proud to be able to serve with them. I am also very pleased to be the Majority Caucus Chair in the House, and so as part of leadership, I get to work with 58 wonderful members that really are passionate about making Washington the best it can be for everybody in the state. I will tell you that I sit on the Education Committee, and it's as a school counselor and a mental health counselor. I'm always looking at how do we make climate, anti-bullying, social-emotional learning, how do we support our students to be the healthiest. I have served as a high school counselor, a middle school counselor, and an elementary school counselor. Let me tell you, the issues are real in all these levels. When you have to talk a 2nd grader down from being suicidal, you know the issues are real and impacting our communities. And this is what our families and our children are facing. We've done a lot of work this year on fentanyl and looking at substance abuse and how do we bring services into the community. We can talk more about that, but very passionate to make sure that these behavioral health services are local and accessible, and we have to keep investing. Our families deserve the best. I also sit in early learning and human services, so we look at all the needs for our juvenile, our human services, and needs for our families that are barely making it, juvenile justice, mental health, child task force, all of those are real as well. And then I sit on the labor committee. I am very passionate about making sure that our workers' rights are protected, and that we make sure that they can make a fair and living and have living wage jobs for themselves. Really working on trying to expand apprenticeship opportunities for our children, and working with higher education to make sure that they have an opportunity to pursue any dream that they have. We have to present options to our young people and make sure that they can take that on to the future. And we've been working a lot as a caucus on community safety, and we are taking a real comprehensive approach. There's not one thing that fixes community safety. We have to look at mental health issues and substance abuse issues and housing issues and jobs and opportunities and law enforcement supports. We need to do a comprehensive look at how do we keep our communities safe. And so those are some of the things I've been working on and very passionate about, and very glad to be here and to answer any questions. My children graduated from Kamiak High School. I sat in those seats and watched performances for many years. Haven't had as much time lately, and every time I say my children graduated from here, Marko reminds me that so did he. That's okay, I love him anyway. And here is my wonderful seatmate, Strom Peterson.
Thank you, Lillian. And I'm sure I've said this before. Marko is right. This is the best state representative in the state. I'm certainly happy to be the second best in the 21st district. But there is something special about these two and our ability to work together. This is not the norm when it comes to legislative districts around the state. Not trying to pick on anybody else, but we have a relationship and have built a relationship over the years in our subject matter expertise and passions, and just our ability to work together. We get together, depending on the schedule of the craziness, but we try to get together once a week, once every couple of weeks, and just go out and have dinner. We'll have dinner with our legislative aides just so we can connect and make sure that we are all hearing from what you are saying. We go over what information is coming to us from you, and really trying to work on the issues from the 21st district and of course statewide. So I can't be more proud than to work with these two. I think we have a great team. And thanks to all of you for kind of keeping us on task. And like Marko, this is an amazing turnout for all of you, but really appreciate our elected officials that are out here today, because that is really part of the team here. So yes, Strom Peterson, I chair the Housing Committee, and we have been working on a lot of housing issues over the last couple of years. In my office, that is certainly the number one issue that we hear about, is housing affordability. How can we deal with the issues at hand? As you know, Washington State is probably 1 million housing units short as we look out into the future. So what can we do as a state with our partners in our local communities to make sure that we're building enough housing, building enough affordable housing for families that already live here, for families that want to move here, for the economy that we've built over the years, building this on the back of like a green economy. And what can we do for the about 30% or 40% of households here in Washington State that are renters? There are kind of three stools to the housing model, and that's the supply, which we've done a lot of work on in the last couple of years. Support, which is the state investments that we can do in affordable housing, which we have done more in the last couple of years than I think we did in the first 6 years I've been in the legislature. And then when it comes to stabilization, that again is really what can we do to help tenants deal with the rising cost of rent and make sure that they can remain housed, and that those families who might be struggling aren't dealing with the emotional, the issues of kids having to move and change schools, and and those effects, kind of downstream effects that have for the kids that Lillian was talking about. I also serve on the capital budget, so really, look forward to hearing ideas and again working with our local elected officials. And then I work on the criminal justice, or not the criminal justice, I always work in acronyms, CSJ. So we deal with a lot of issues really around gun violence in that committee. So really proud of the work that Marko has done over the last couple of years with high capacity magazines, and the work that we've done on assault weapons, and the work that we continue to do to really make sure that our communities are safe when it comes to gun violence. So appreciate you all being here, and look forward to the questions. And it's civil rights and judiciary, that's the name.
All right, let's get another round of applause. I mean, we want to make sure that we know that we're loved about the work we're doing, and how much it is important and affects all of us. So we're going to get started with the questions, and so I think we're going to go with the first question, or are we going to have an oral question? Okay, so if you have a question and you want to ask verbally, come line up. First one's first. Sorry, I know chaos is real, but yes. We'll have these two lines merged. It's great. It's great. Okay, so we got Ashton first. And I don't know, so I'll be honest, y'all. We're not all going to get to all of the questions because we're not going to do all verbal. We're going to do some written as well. So I just want to manage expectations. And if you want to chat with me after, you're welcome to. But go ahead.
Thanks, Harry.
Yep.
I'm Ashwin Sanghvi, Marko Liias. Thank you for taking the question. My question is regarding sovereignty that citizens have over their bodies, right? This is a God-given right. As we all now know, it took some time, now we know that the health experts at CDC, WHO, whatever, were quite wrong during the pandemic. The vaccinations were neither safe nor effective. There was no scientific basis to the 6 feet of distancing and so on. The required medical protocols were also sometimes dangerous or life-threatening. So my question is, why do you not learn from that and refrain from pushing bills that further put uninformed government bodies in control of healthcare? Okay?
Okay, and so we're going to take 2 more questions and then kind of line them up. So.
Thank you. Sharon Gamble, Marko Liias. I realized I needed to start paying more attention to what was happening in Olympia last year when 5599 was pending. That terrible bill, prime-sponsored by Senator Liias, allows the state to hide vulnerable kids from loving families for the purpose of giving them dangerous drugs. That's just one bill among many that seeks to divide kids from their parents and to put the state in place of loving parents. That's a disturbing trend. So this year I've been paying great attention. I have remotely attended dozens of hearings and testified at several of them, and I've been shocked and overwhelmed by how many bills there are and how bad many of them are. So many of these bills seek to regulate and control people in all areas of our lives, from what kind of tires we can buy to forcing housing density on us. These bills are bad both in how they regulate smallish matters that should be up to everyone to decide for themselves and in the really big matters. Senator Liias is the prime sponsor of 56 bills himself, and he's the co-sponsor of 247 more. I don't need 303 laws governing me. So that's an authoritarian impulse to have so many laws. Why do you have an authoritarian government in big and small ways?
So I just want to be clear, thank you so much, is that these are for questions. We're going to be asking questions here. So if you don't have a question, I'm going to ask that you please sit down. All right?
Are they going to answer your question?
They are. We're going to just queue them up so that we can have a nice, efficient flow. Thank you for asking.
Better to do it one at a time.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. The third question is, homelessness is rising as rents are rising, causing economic evictions all over the state. House Bill 2114, the rent stabilization bill, will help slow the bleed of homelessness. I know of many people who receive rent increases in the hundreds of dollars. Do you support capping rents at 7% per year to help keep people housed while allowing landlords to make a profit? And that's 3 questions. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and we've done this in the past where we kind of take 3 so more people can get their question, and we will answer all 3. So this is the model that we've used in the past quite successfully last year and the year before. So thank you, but we will get to all 3 questions, I promise. I'll start with the last one just because I chair the Housing Committee. We passed House Bill 2114, the rent stabilization bill, off the floor of the House on Tuesday night. This is a bill that I've been championing, that I've been working hard on, really trying to work closely with not only the advocates caring about tenants, and as they say, with every $100 of rent increase, there is at least a 10% increase in homelessness in that community. So we're really trying to find a way to give tenants the same predictability that I have as a mortgage owner. I know what my mortgage payments are going to be for the next 30 years, so this is an attempt to give folks, this is 30-40% of the people in our community that are renters, to give them the same stability that I have. This is hard work. There's a lot of conversation going on. We've been working on this piece of legislation for at least 5 years. So these are hard decisions. But I think it's important as we see our homelessness rates ever increasing and more families spending 30, 40, 50% of their income just on housing. We need to try to find a solution. I think rent stabilization is that solution. When it comes to the other question, yeah, we are a representative form of government, and we pass laws that we think are important for protecting the kids in the state of Washington. We pass laws that we think are important for protecting the environment in the state of Washington. We pass laws that we think are important for road safety. Marko, as chair of the Transportation Committee, has done incredible work over the years to make sure that our roads are safer, that make sure that our cars are safer, and all of the things that really impact our day-to-day life. And again, working closely with our local elected officials to not only pass laws and what works in our community, but then to make sure that we're enacting these laws fairly and that we're getting the information out to citizens. Do we get it right all the time? No. Can we go back and fix it? Absolutely, and that's what this process is about. This is why we go back to Olympia every year. We work during the interim to perfect bills, and that's why we have these conversations. I believe strongly that our response to the pandemic was data-driven and science-driven. And I would ask, don't get me wrong, I appreciate the applause, but I think it will go a lot faster if we can just kind of keep all the comments positive or negative on this. But there's always, science is always growing and evolving. That is kind of what science is. But I believe that as we look at statistically across the country, that Washington citizens fared better in health impacts to COVID than just about any other state in the country. And I think we should be proud of the work that we did. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to put on my elementary school educator, middle school educator, high school educator hat. When I am speaking to students, I ask for respect and I give them respect. I'm going to ask, please, that if we could stop the yelling and talking back, we can make sure that everyone hears and that your voice is heard in a very respectful manner. It's what we expect from our students sitting in these halls, and I would hope that we can demonstrate that here, because we want to hear what you have to say. But when you're yelling out, you silence the voices of others, and that doesn't work very effectively. So please, let's model for what we expect from our students. I'm going to say this. Homelessness is a huge problem. It's a problem that needs multiple facets. It's one that we've been looking at, again, I mentioned earlier, from a mental health standpoint, from a substance abuse standpoint, from housing availability standpoint, workforce. It is one that it takes all of us, local, state, federal government, to work together. If you do not think that homelessness should be an issue for moral reasons that we address, then I am sure you think it is one for fiscal reasons we need to address, because nobody wants their town to be surrounded by people with homeless insecurity, because it shows our moral failure. They are our neighbors, and we have to do better by that. And every time we see them in the streets, it should be a reminder that we're failing. So we've got a lot of work to do in that area. As far as the vaccines, our caucus just trusts science. And we have to trust science, and it will change. And we believe we have saved millions of people by acting the way that we did. The research shows that, and it will continue to evolve. And you have the right to not do it. As far as parents, I am, as an educator, I will tell you this. We make rules in the Education Committee to protect all children, all children. We also make rules that we always at the forefront will state parents have the right. They are the #1 parent and controller of their children. They have a right to opt out of anything that they do not agree with. But they do not have the right to tell me as a parent how to parent my child, or you to parent yours. So we all have a right to parent our children. Our jobs as legislator is not to tell you how to parent your child. Our job as legislators is to make sure that every child feels safe in our classrooms and in our buildings. And that is our goal, and to make sure that every child has an opportunity to learn and to remove barriers so that that can happen. It is not our job to tell you how to parent your child, and that is not something we want to do. So you always, as far as I'm concerned, and honestly my colleagues, will always have the right to opt out of anything that you disagree with in our public school system, because we don't want that parent control.
Thank you so much. A good reminder that democracy is important but not easy. So I appreciate your questions. I agree with my colleagues on our pandemic response. We were guided by our public health experts, and our outcomes have meant fewer Washingtonians died during the pandemic per capita than we saw in other parts of the country. Of course, we can learn from that response, and of course, the CDC and others are adjusting their recommendations even now as we learn more about how COVID works and how to respond. So that's my comment there. On rent stabilization, I'll be really honest, I do have concerns about making a balanced solution. I want to make sure we protect tenants who absolutely are struggling with increasing costs, but I also am worried about our small landlords and making sure that we don't push our small landlords to a place where they sell their house or sell their property and don't offer those rentals for folks. I think about my own experiences. The best rental experience I ever had was living in the downstairs apartment, and my landlady lived upstairs, and we had an amazing relationship. We cooked dinner for each other. She was a music teacher. She even gave me a singing lesson. I'm not sure it really worked, but it was a great relationship. I've also had an opportunity to rent from large national corporate conglomerates, and those were not the same kind of personalized experience. So I think not all renters experience the same thing. Not all landlords are the same. We need to find a policy that's balanced for all these situations. The House has passed a bill. It's going to go to our Senate committees for hearings. We're going to continue to work on it. And we got to do more to support our tenants, but we got to make sure we get the details right. So I'll keep working on that. And then I do want to address, it is true that I have introduced a lot of bills. One of those bills came from Chief Lillian and Tio, who said, hey, the way that this law and this law work, we can't have park rangers and animal control officers anymore in Tio. Can you fix that? And I thought, I like our park rangers in Tio, and I like the fact that we have animal control officers doing their work. So, hey, if the chief thinks we got to fix it, we should. A constituent, Lauren, was trying to put a heat pump into her home, but she lives in a condo association, so they were blocking her ability to put in a heat pump. And I thought, well, we should figure out a way that condo associations can weigh in, but also that folks that live there can get heat pumps. So that's one of my bills. The Port of Everett said, hey, we are having a tough time funding infrastructure to keep our supply chain working. Could you help us with some grants for that? That's another one of my bills. So yes, there are, I don't know, I haven't counted lately, maybe there are 56, I believe you, that's probably true. A lot of those come from ideas here in our community, and that's my job. When you bring ideas, when you bring things that aren't working in state law, it's my job to bring those ideas forward. And if other people perceive that as tyranny, that's why we have these town halls, so we can hear about it and we can talk through the details, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. The final thing I'll mention is 5599. This bill has been the subject of more disinformation and misinformation than anything I've done in my 16 years. And I encourage you to read our news media accounts of this bill from last year. There was a lot of fact-checking and explanatory material. You don't have to take my word for it. You can read whether it's the Seattle Times or the Associated Press. They sort of looked at both sides of the issue and can give you some guidance. We face a situation today where, unfortunately, some of our trans youth in this state are kicked out of their homes before they're 18. And I just think a 14 or 15-year-old being on our streets in this community, living on our streets, unattended, unsupervised, is a horrible situation. And the way the law was written before, young person had to get permission to stay in a youth shelter for more than 3 days. So we have some parents that have kicked the kid out and won't give permission for them to stay in a shelter. I can't imagine the situation. I'm sure there's a lot of complication to it, but my opinion is that when you're 14, 15, 16 years old, we need to make sure you're in a safe and supervised place while we sort out all the details. So the bill that we passed says young people can stay in shelter. You've got to be in touch with the local law enforcement so everybody knows where the kid is. You got to be in touch with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. And the department needs to immediately launch family reunification efforts. We want to get kids home as quickly as possible. But if we can't get them home immediately, they need to be someplace safe and supervised and cared for. That's what the bill does. It doesn't steal kids. It doesn't do all the parade of horribles we've heard. It makes sure that our kids are safe while we figure out how to get them back to their families and make that possible. That's a policy I supported last year. It's a policy I'll continue to support, and I appreciate the questions. We look forward to answering more of them.
Thank you. All right, let's keep it rolling, y'all. We got a lot of folks in line, and a lot of questions. So next up, please, Councilmember Marko.
Hi. I have a question about housing affordability. And in my humble opinion, what do I know? I'm just a lowly taxpayer here. But I think the answer is to fix the economy, not to legislate all of these housing rules and put it on the taxpayers to pay for people that can't afford a house. And I'd also like to say that there's a lot of people upset about this bill, a lot of councilors, mayors, and citizens. 82% of Mukilteoans voted against higher density housing, but this bill, HB 1110, is now mandating higher density housing here for Mukilteo. And so the citizens are angry, the mayors and councils are angry because you're usurping our authority to plan our city. And that also, if we don't follow your mandate, you'll take away tax money so we can't get money for roads and our stormwater. So I guess my question is to you, what do you say to the people of Mukilteo that have opposed HB 1110?
I'm going to go ahead and hold this just so I can, not to take it away from anybody, but, you know, when we get to the question, we just need to make sure. So.
Thank you for being here today. I'm glad to hear that the Democrats decided yesterday to uphold their constitutional duty to have hearings on 3 of the 6 initiatives signed in overwhelming numbers by Democrats, Independents, Republicans across Washington, which recall legislation passed by Democrats in prior sessions. Our state constitution declares all 6 were supposed to have hearings prior to any non-budget related legislation. Until now, this was ignored by Democrats this session. These 3 hearings seem to be a strategy to have less measures to combat voters on in the November election. Reporter Jerry Kornfeld stated that Democrat lawmakers, quote, have seen data from polling and focus groups showing immense popular support for the 3 initiatives getting hearings. Beating them could be tough, lawmakers and political strategists acknowledge privately, unquote. Now that you are clearly aware the will of the people, please pass the Reasonable Pursuit Initiative, the Parental Bill of Rights, and the ban on personal income tax initiatives. I would also encourage you to do your duty to hold hearings on the other 3 initiatives regarding repealing the extremely burdensome taxes on the people of this state. Washingtonians are tired of being looked at as the government's piggy banks. In the past, our government insulted voters by saying the people of the state were not smart enough to know what is coming, what we were voting for, as they did when they overturned the people's vote in the $30 car tabs. I think we, the people, know exactly what we signed and what we are voting for, both then and now. I hope we don't get the same insulting rhetoric from our government again. My question is, will you uphold the state constitution and hold hearings on the other 3 tax recall initiatives and uphold the will of the people by voting to make all 6 initiatives into law? as elected representatives of the residents of the 21st LD? If not all,
Okay.
will you side with the people on any of these initiatives, and which ones?
Thank you. And then the next written question is, I'm a teacher in your district. We're tired of the budget cuts. Please fund our schools so that students can get the education they deserve. Yes, I got an education. How are you planning on making sure our schools get funded?
Great questions. I started my working life founding a family-run construction company with my parents and had a chance to build some homes and duplexes here in South Snohomish County. So I take seriously the opportunity and the obligation to help people find their first home, to achieve the dream of home ownership in our community. And the reality is we have more people moving to our region than we have housing stock to accommodate that. So in every community around the state, we need to figure out how we accommodate the growth that's coming, and that is one of the toughest jobs of local governments and our partnership with the state, is to figure out how to accommodate that growth. Last year we passed a couple of measures that were designed to give flexibility to local governments and to set some targets so that every community is accommodating the growth that we're seeing happening here in the region. And to Councilmember Bago, I hear that you disagree with one of those measures, and look forward to more conversations around why you disagree and if there are things we can do. But at a high level, folks are moving here. We need to accommodate that growth, and we need to do that in partnership. So that's my view on how we move forward on housing. On the initiatives, I've been in the legislature for a while, and we have often agreed and disagreed with folks about initiatives to the legislature. It's a unique process where with initiatives to the legislature, the initiative first comes to us to look at. And if we agree with it, we can pass it into law. And if we don't agree with it, then it goes to the voters to help referee the disagreement. And there were 6 initiatives sent to us this year. A couple of them would have deeply devastating impacts on our ability to fund public schools and transportation, to help people age in dignity, and so I just can't agree with them. The capital gains tax initiative, 3,000 very wealthy Washingtonians pay the capital gains tax, and it funds our public schools. It would result in over $1 billion a year of cuts to our public education. I can't support that, and so I don't support passing that initiative. It will go to the people, and the people will have a chance to weigh in on whether they agree with what my conclusion has been or whether they want to do something different. Similarly, Initiative 2117 would cut $5 billion from transportation funding in our state. As the chair of the Transportation Committee, I cannot tell you in good conscience that cutting $5 billion is the right decision for our transportation system. It will harm our ability to buy new ferries and keep our ferry fleet moving forward. It will harm our ability to expand transit service so that more people can get to where they need to go. It will harm our efforts to preserve and maintain our transportation system. So I cannot support an initiative that would have that devastating impact on our transportation system. This will go to the people, and all of us will get a chance to weigh in on whether that's a good idea or not. There are 3 initiatives where it's not clear what the impact is, and we are getting advice from our Attorney General's office about the legal implications. We're asking for analysis of the fiscal impacts, and those 3 initiatives we will have hearings on to really understand what they do, and if they don't have negative impacts, I will support them. If the people think that we should make these changes and they won't move us backwards, then I will listen and vote accordingly. But we need to have hearings on those, and we will do that. So that's where I stand on the initiatives. On teachers and budget cuts, this is one of the toughest issues we face this session. During the pandemic, we got unprecedented federal assistance for our public schools to help us through the pandemic. That federal assistance is now going away. And so now districts are facing the reality that the federal dollars, the extra dollars we got during the pandemic, just like a lot of us got those stimulus checks during the pandemic, those extra funds are going away, and people perceive that as a budget cut. those are not state dollars that we were able to put in. Those are federal funds that we no longer have. And so we need to figure out how to plug that gap and work on that difference. But these are not decisions we've made in Olympia to take funding that used to go to education and spend it on something else. These are these pandemic dollars that are ending for us. I will say in our budget proposal that will be released tomorrow, our Senate Ways and Means Chair briefed us yesterday and said the single largest place we're investing in our budget is in public education. And as we have some extra dollars because our revenue projections have been strong, the largest place of investment for those new dollars is in our public schools. So it remains our top priority, but we're going to have to work together to figure out what to do with the federal pandemic funds going away and how we navigate a path forward.
And just very quickly, let me just say that the initiatives we're not having hearings on, for me, I want to hear from the people, because just as I hear about things like, for example, the initiatives that we are not hearing have huge impacts on our communities, like Senator Liias said, schools and infrastructure. So I equally hear from constituents that say, please fund our schools. You can't take millions and billions of dollars from our schools. You can't take $9 billion away from our infrastructure, complaining about commutes, complaining about potholes, complaining about bridges that are falling down. And so those are issues, those initiatives that we're taking back to the people for us in the House became issues because we got both sides 50-50. We're hearing from both sides equally that they demand this. And so when we're going to take that much money away from schools, we're going to take that much money away from our infrastructure, we need the people to speak. And we need to hear from them. And so those are the ones that we're saying, let's hear the voices of the people. The other ones, you know, we think we can come up with some consensus and support and hear, but there are some that have some huge fiscal impacts. And those are the ones that we want the most voices to hear. As far as education, the House budget has increased and lifted the special education cap. Our budget shows 17%. We have increased it. We have put in millions into operating and supplies, what we call our MSOC budget. That is the one line item we heard from every school district across the state that they wanted increase. We have increased it by like $50 million investment into that area. So we continue to try to meet the gaps. We know that we have a prototypical school model that isn't working across the state, and it's going to take a lot of work to redo it. We currently spend 60% of the state budget on education, but in order to do it, we also need income. And after the pandemic and the federal dollars leaving and COVID and everything families have gone through, this is not the time where we can pull all that extra dollars. So with 60% of our budget going to education, we are trying to do our best, and every dollar that gets freed up, we're trying to put in there to help. And so as you can see, it's not an easy solution to revamp, but like Senator Liias said, our extra dollars are going in there. We know the investment that needs to be made on our young people and what it means for the future of the state of Washington.
Excuse me?
We're not going to take any additional questions. Yeah, it is cutting in and out. If it persists, I'll go ahead and switch the mic.
No, just put it to your mouth.
Sometimes,
Sorry.
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah, it's amazing how different that can be. Starting off on the education piece, I just do want to give a little shout out to the Edmond School District and the Yes for Our Schools. I think that the voters of Edmonds, at least in the Edmonds School District, have spoken quite loudly that they support schools, and so thank you for that. I think the problem that we face as state legislators is for every successful initiative that we see, you know, and the hard work that was put in here locally, we see school districts around the state that can't pass these bond levies. And so we as a state need to do something for these schools. These schools, often in rural areas, often in communities that just don't have the tax base to support them. And it's, again, this, you know, governing is hard, democracy is hard. And really taking that information from around the state and figuring out the best ways to support to support school kids in Tenino and to support school kids in northeastern Washington that don't have the ability, the tax base to really build strong schools. So that's the work that Lillian does and has been championing when she's been such a champion on education. And some of the work that I get to do on the capital budget is to figure out how we can better support schools and make sure that we're building schools and keeping schools safe from an infrastructure standpoint. So it is hard, and that is one of the reasons when we did pass the capital gains tax that we dedicated money towards education around the state to make sure that kids around the state were going to get the education that they deserve and that constitutionally we need to make sure that they get. So if we were to repeal that capital gains tax, again, maybe 3,000 people in the entire state of Washington are subject to that tax. So it's like the 1/10 of the 1/10 of 1%. That would have devastating impacts to our schools here locally and around the state. When it comes to House Bill 1110, that was a bill we did a lot of work, and I certainly understand some frustration, but just to give people an idea, this is kind of reintroducing types of housing that we've had historically in communities like Mukilteo and historically in communities like Edmonds, where it's a duplex or a fourplex, maybe a sixplex if you're really close to transit. These are not, high-rise buildings that are going, next to your home. And again, these are choices that homeowners get to make if they want to or don't want to build a single-family home. We have not outlawed single-family housing. If you want to build a single-family home, you can. However, if you own a single-family home and want to add a detached accessory dwelling unit because your parents want to downsize or maybe your kids want to move back to the community where they grew up so they can get a start, those are things that will now be allowed. I think for too long, too many cities were allowing very modest and moderate types of housing. We know that, again, as I said in my opening, we're about 1 million housing units short as we project out into the future. We know Washington is a great place to live. More people are moving here. People that grew up here, case in point, want to stay in their community. We need to make sure that we have housing opportunities for all of those people. So we continue to work on that. We also want to make sure that as we pass laws, just as we pass laws for anybody in Washington state, that those laws are enforced and that people are following those laws. And that's true for our cities and counties, to make sure that if we have a law in the books, that we need to make sure that there is an enforcement mechanism for those laws. And so that's some of the work that we continue.
Those laws,
Right.
and now you're mandating.
And so that's some of the continuing work that we do and conversations that we're having, again, with our local elected officials and others. So I think housing is a critical piece of building community, and I think we're moving in a very smart direction, as many other states around the country are.
Thank you. All right, next up.
Tony Demoff, Mukilteo. HB 2474 requires that cities may not prohibit transitional housing or permanent supportive housing in any zone where residential dwelling units or hotels are allowed. The primary sponsor is Representative Peterson. This bill, like HB 1110, will overrule cities and ignore community decision-making regarding housing and zoning. HB 2474, like HB 1110, is heavy-handed and will punish a city that does not comply with so-called dispute resolution decisions by pulling state funds. This bill seems to be in response to an action that citizens of Kenmore took in opposing a housing project. The developer switched who would be allowed to be in the housing by bypassing the citizens. The three of you are supposed to be representing the citizens of the 21st District and are instead using your authority to make laws in opposition to what Mukilteo and Edmonds wants for their cities and will punish them if they do not comply. It seems that you do not want to represent the people that elected you, but you want to represent someone else or other group's interests. You, in short, want to strip us of our rights to self-determination and force us to alter our cities in ways we do not want. This includes growth management and comprehensive plans. I understand people need to be housed somewhere, but why are you stripping cities of their power to choose, and why are you proposing to use our tax dollars, our own money, as punishment? Why should we keep voting for you when you do this? Thank you.
Good morning. I want to thank you guys for being here and thank you for the tough work that you do. My name is Jennifer Castle and I'm a parent from Lynnwood High School. So my questions are around education funding. Last year we had some traumatic budget cuts and at that time, I guess the result of it to our students were large classes, a lot of programs being cut, teachers moving from school to school, kind of disrupting a little bit of the harmony and the mentorship that could happen, some of the wonderful things that can happen inside of a high school, a lot of discord between the parent community and administrators. This year we're faced with the same type of cuts. So as a parent advocate, I've been trying to educate myself at the genesis of this, and a couple of things are very difficult. For example, I know about the ESRA funds. My understanding from our budget cut last year of 15 million, our ESRA was only like 2 or 3 million. So the ESRA doesn't, in my opinion, as a parent advocate, seem to address our specific situation. So my questions for you are twofold. One is, I guess I should say one last thing. Data point that I've also studied is Chris Reichdale from OSPI has shown a chart that shows that over the years since 2019, the percentage of the state budget going to education has decreased from around 52% to 44%. So again, it's a confusing statistic. There's a lot of different numbers out there and a lot of ways to look at things. So my questions are, one, with the anticipated budget surplus coming this year of 1.2 billion, are you in support of allocating at least 44% of that to go back to the districts to try to help with the funding shortage? And then two, you mentioned that the prototypical school model needs a change. What work will you guys do as a legislature to try to address the shortcomings of the prototypical school model? And thank you so much for giving me so much time.
Thank you. Next written question is, we need covered pickleball courts in Mukilteo. White would be great. The fast growing sport needs courts in Mukilteo. Exclamation point.
I want to address the school issue because I sit on the education committee. I first was elected when we had a lawsuit against the state for underfunding education. I decided to run because as an educator, I was listening to the stories of our families and our children and the shortcomings I was seeing every single day in education. And I finally had enough and said, okay, we need an educator up there. There was no practicing educator at the time but one. When I got there, we now have 3. And so we know every day what happens in the classroom. We know every day what is happening in our school buildings, the shortcomings, the lack of services, and we know which children are being left behind. And we don't like it, and it's a fight. And we're also dealing with billions of dollars. And so many needs in our state. So we continue, there's no easy answer to any of this. But what I will say is that the prototypical school model was formed in response to that lawsuit. But that lawsuit was over 10 years ago. So by the time the lawsuit was funded, we were already behind and some changes that needed to happen. And then we got hit with the pandemic and then the federal dollars. So I will say, as far as Chris Reichdahl's report, when we were getting the ESSER dollars, then state dollars pulled back some because we were getting an abundance of federal dollars. So he's right, there was a decrease in how much money from the state we were putting in because we were able to draw down from the feds. I'm sorry, I keep doing that. Thank you. What we were able to draw down from the feds. When the federal dollars went away, we started again reinvesting all our state dollars. Now it's just gone. Let me try that again. Is that better?
Nope. Try this one.
How about this one? Better?
Yes.
Okay. We have started that investment again where the majority of our budget goes into education because we've lost all the federal dollars that came into our state. So yes, what are we willing to do about it? Well, we need to really look at, one of the things we're looking at is what kind of support services need to be put in place We just, things like counselors, paraeducators. We've had bills around that lately. How do we increase that? How do we make sure that our graduation requirements align and we're fully funding it? How do we have smaller class sizes? How do we have remedial services? How do we have options for our students in their 5th year and 6th year plan? All of those things take money and time, and how do we do it not just for schools in affluent zip codes, but how do we do that statewide in counties and districts that don't have the funding to even pass a tax levy, and some which never will. So it is not an easy answer, but it is one that we continue to chip away at. Again, all we can say is, we hear you, and those of us that work in the schools every day, we see it. And it's something that we need to continue to address. Pickleball courts. I'll tell you what, for my family, playing pickleball got us through the pandemic. So totally in support of that, would love to see them come to Mukilteo. We transformed a tennis court near our area and put in a removable pickleball net, and that's how we got through the pandemic for my family. So would love to see formal pickleball courts come. A very funny story is that right now, coming next week, we have a legislative pickleball match happening in Olympia. So we definitely love the sport, and it's a great way to bring generations together. I'm going to let Strom, 24/7.
Yeah, yes to pickleball, exclamation point. But I want to address House Bill 2474. This was actually not in reaction to what happened in Kenmore. This was reaction to what happened in another city where there was a motel that was housing about 40, that fortunately is still housing 47 individuals that were homeless, that is run by Catholic Community Services, and that city pulled the permit and threatened to kick everybody out by the end of February. So that's where this bill generated. I was, talking with the city, talking with the governor's office, talking with other housing advocates. I was furious. They were going to put people out on the street. They were going to put veterans out on the street. They were going to put single men that were struggling to find housing out on the street. This was the only housing option in the entire area of South King County that these people had. And by pulling the permit, the city was breaking the law. We passed House Bill 1220, working closely with the Association of Washington Cities and others to make sure that these housing types, if there's a motel, that these other types of housing types would be allowed. That's the law of the state. This city is breaking, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the Attorney General's office, is breaking the law of the state. So we need to figure out how can we convince cities that that is not a good thing to do. If cities are following the law, if they're allowing transitional housing, if they're making sure that if there's an emergency housing need in their community, and there is emergency housing needs in all of our communities. Homeless people in our communities come from our communities. Over 80% of the homeless people in any community, their last address was in that community. If you do the point in time count and you look at the information that you get when talking to people that are living in their cars, when you get the information for people that are are unstable in their housing, they are still in the community in which, from their last address. That's just statistically true. So this is an opportunity, House Bill 2474, is to make sure that cities are playing by the rules. The city next door might be putting in transitional housing. The other city should also fill their legal obligations to do the same. So this is an opportunity. If the city of Mukilteo, I have every belief that Mayor Marine wants to follow the law. I have every belief that Mayor Rosen wants to follow the law. And if they are working in good faith to find housing opportunities for people who are suffering from homelessness or people who need stable housing, then House Bill 2474 has no effect. If you are blatantly breaking the law, we will try to create a dispute resolution process to where the city and the housing provider and the Department of Commerce can get together and figure out what the solution is. Let's get to yes. That's how this is set up. But if there's a refusal, then yes, there will be implications, and the Department of Commerce, which currently there are some opportunities to make sure that cities there will be consequences. And I think that's true with any law that we pass in the state.
Address addiction.
Let me comment quickly too on housing. Just as a reminder, as a state legislature, of course, we want to represent our constituents and hear their voices. But we also hear all voices. So equally, we wrestle with the inconvenience and what does this mean and what does this mean with our town, but we also wrestle with hearing the voices of those that may not be here because they don't have transportation. We wrestle with hearing the voices of those moms in my school who are living out of their car because they got evicted. We hear from a single parent dad who can't afford to rent a place. We hear from parents such as you, who are in dire need desire to have their children move back into this community, who graduated college and can't live here because they can't afford to live here, and an ADU might make a difference for them. We hear from everybody, the citizen who's trying to find housing for their parents, and they want them in their community. We hear from everybody, the homeowner and the rent owner and those without stable housing. And our job is to try to figure out a way to make it fair and safe and accessible for everybody. And that is not an easy task, and it is not an attack on one group or another. It's the job that is before all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take the next question.
Thank you.
Okay.
One question.
Okay, next question. Next question.
Hi, I'm Terry Dudley. I live in Edmonds, and I've got an issue that I've brought up oftentimes with all three of these folks on the panel, and I have yet to hear a response. And that has to do with the low income senior tax exemption that's calculated in the state. And in the math, in the formula of calculating low income, at the bottom of the application, it says disposable income, and that's the number that's used to calculate the qualification. Disposable income in the state's math, that includes income tax. They don't use income tax as a deduction. So in other words, income tax that you owe money on and that you pay is not registered. It's not registered as income. It shouldn't be. It's hardly disposable. It's designated for taxes. So my suggestion is, my question is, I think a lot of seniors are getting shortchanged in the tax exemption that they're entitled to. By showing more income, because it includes income tax, you move up the layers of qualification, and you can actually be priced out of qualification. So the form needs to be changed, the formula needs to be changed, and to eliminate income tax to show as income for low-income seniors, so that they have a better chance of staying in their house. That's my question. I'd like to hear some sort of a quick answer from any of you.
We're going to line up the questions, unfortunately, so we're just going to keep the format the same. So next. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Lori Everett, sort of. I have not heard the mental health crisis addressed. I have two neurospicy kids. One of them was at CLIP, the other one currently is in a long-term residential in Utah, because there is nothing in this state. There is no stabilization in this state. Children's Hospital, 40 beds. Stabilizations at Children's because there's nothing else they can do means the kid leaves when he's not ready to either kill himself or someone else. That is the baseline. There is no wraparound. It takes 3 to 6 months to get on a wraparound, and it's a crapshoot at best. On the north end, we got nothing. Smoky Point is a dangerous facility. I wouldn't send a rabid dog to that place, and I tell people not to take their children there. And then when that crosses over to everything else, to the school, I want to know how we're unraveling this so our kids can get something. instead of having to chug the bottle and wind up at Seattle Children's. We need something before it gets to that point. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And next written question is, what are you doing to protect abortion rights in Washington State?
Just so we can get through more questions. On the senior tax exemption, absolutely, we'll look into that. One of the things that we are looking at, that there's a bill that I think came out of the Senate, looking to make sure that if a senior is renting, if they have an ADU and they're renting out that ADU, that income does not count against their senior tax exemption. So really trying to find some creative ways, one, to maybe get, again, to some of the housing issues and create some affordable housing, but to make sure that we are protecting seniors and giving them the opportunity to stay in their homes. The specifics of that, I don't know, but I know that our team is, writing down, and if you have emailed us, just so you know, especially during the session, it is crazy busy, but all of our LAs and our teams will get to you as the session winds down, and we also have some great staff that we have down in Olympia to really dig in and work with state agencies when it comes to especially specific questions or issues you might be having with the Employment Security Division or others. We have some great new staff on board to really help with that. So keep those questions, those emails coming. We will answer them. Just right now during session, it can get a little bit tricky, but just wanted to touch base on that tax exemption piece.
Thank you. And the mental health piece is the one that we've been trying to invest more ever since, in the last 4 years. We have, this budget, we have increased dollars to start a stabilization place, unfortunately not north at Harborview. It is the only inpatient facility that we have, and we have to keep it going, other than psychiatric facilities. So we, in our budget, invest quite a few dollars in that. We are investing dollars in local mental health and drug facilities at an alarming rate, and not fast enough, because we were so far behind that the amount of money we keep investing like we've never invested before isn't even enough. But we are trying to get services down to the local level. We're trying to put in bills such as the fentanyl bill that we passed out of our Child Welfare Committee to make sure that there are providers, that we don't pass a bill that says, you can't do this, without making sure we are providing for those that are heavily in addiction, that are struggling with mental health issues, and we're trying to build partnerships with our schools to try to do that. Now, is it enough? No, we have a crisis. And we need to do more. And unfortunately, the more means a lot of dollars. And when we don't have the extra dollars or to do that work, it becomes difficult because we have to take it from somewhere. So the struggle continues, but we are aware, and in the last 3 years have invested more money in mental health services than we have as a state for a long time.
One question each.
I believe that it is every woman's right to determine what she does with her body. As far as the abortion issue, I believe that is between her God, her doctor, and her family and herself, and I will continue to fight for that right as long as I'm a legislator.
Does that apply to that? It's hard to hear the heckling from back there, but I will say on the mental health question, the second largest source of investments in our budget, Lori, I see you're walking out, but the second largest source of investments.
Wait your turn, light out. I don't have a mic, so I can't say anything.
I guess I don't have to answer that.
Yeah, if you
strongly supportive of abortion rights. We're going to make sure we do that. Our 50% of our new revenue is going to go to education. The next largest source is to create mental health beds like the ones that Lori was asking about. We need to do more crisis intervention for folks. And then Terry, the low-income senior tax exemption, it's a complicated question. We're right now revamping that and increasing the income limits based on a bill that passed a couple years ago. So as we implement that to make further changes, it's sort of complicated, but we'll get through it.
If he takes 3 questions, can't each one of you answer one of them so that we can actually get to these? 'Cause you all
So
say
I
the
know,
same
I know
thing.
it feels like this town hall is just for you, but there's 100 people here. And I want to make sure that everybody gets to hear our positions on things, that everybody gets an opportunity to weigh in, and that each of us gets an opportunity to share our views on these topics with each of you. So we're going to continue on that way.
I also want to say that they have a lot of context that not everybody sees, and I appreciate hearing some of what they have to see on the state level as well as in places where I don't usually go. So I just wanted to hopefully mitigate that too.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the 3 of you for being here. I know what it feels like to be on the hot seat. I'm here representing the Edmonds School Board. Thank you. And I appreciate the comments that have been made so far regarding public education, and especially what you're saying in terms of your high priority for supporting it. But as always, the devil's in the details. We've been doing bill tracking. And I have to say that the bills that started out as looking very, very hopeful for meeting our needs, and let me give you a quick recent statistic, is that 19 districts across the state are now in financial warning, which is the step just before binding conditions, which means school districts are going broke. Edmonds is thankfully not there yet, but Tacoma and North Shore, significant different districts, are there. If nothing big is done, we will be there in a year or 2. Our class sizes are huge. We are suffering, let me put it that way. Following the bills, the MSOX bill isn't giving us much more than we already have. The special ed cap bill, we're already under 15%, and most districts are. There was an experience factor bill that would have given us $3 million because we really value the experience level of our teachers. We are now getting 0 after it's been revised, and only 9 districts in the entire state will benefit from that bill, and they're all small districts. There's another bill that would lift the levy cap. Our voters have said, we can take more than you will let us. I know this is part of McCleary, but frankly, in the state's quest to bring equity, you have made us all poor. I couldn't say that in a better way. My question is this: what will you be doing in this session to meet this huge need now, and what will you be doing in the long run to address the prototypical school model and the other parts of the funding formula, which I need to point out, the prototypical school model was created in 1995, not after McCleary. It's just been tweaked and tweaked. It is so out of date. It is in no way meeting our needs. Thank you.
Congratulations on passing.
Hello. I'd like to ask about HB 2118. HB 2118 claims it would protect the public from gun violence, quote unquote. Businesses called FFLs have the federal firearms license. HB 2118 apparently wants to force many FFLs out of business in Washington state. This bill would require 24/7 video monitoring of multiple parts of the business building and require storing those videos electronically for years. That'd be very expensive. Even a home-based business would have these requirements, meaning a requirement to video inside the person's own house. The bill also has additional expensive requirements beyond videos I won't list right now. Businesses must have an FFL license to sell guns or ammunition. The effect of this bill would be to require costs which are high enough to put many FFLs out of business or push them to move to another state. The Second Amendment says, quote, "The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed," end quote. Our state constitution has similar wording. Since the Second Amendment says we have a right to keep and bear arms, it clearly also means we have a right to purchase guns and gun supplies. Otherwise, a right to keep arms would only apply to people who were alive in 1791 when the Bill of Rights was ratified. This bill is already passed out of one chamber. How did you vote, or how do you plan to vote on 2118? Please explain your answer.
Next question. The cost of living is out of control and getting worse since COVID. How will you address the economic hardships we are facing, especially for those of us who rely on unemployment benefits?
I will start with House Bill 2118. There have been quite a few changes. We did talk to a lot of FFL and the gun advocates to try to find things that would make this affordable. But the underlying point of the bill is we know that illegal guns get out on the streets, stolen guns get out on the streets, and we're trying to do what we can to keep that from happening. So there are I think some pretty common sense things that if you have an FFL, a firearms license to sell weapons, that you need to take certain precautions to make sure that those are safe, and if something happens, that law enforcement has the ability to find out who the bad guys are that broke in and stole the guns, or that came in and did a straw purchase, which means somebody's buying a gun for somebody else or a number of guns for somebody else. We made a lot of changes to the bill because we did hear from license holders about the expense, so a lot of those changes were made in committee. I voted yes for that bill. I voted yes out of committee. I believe I'm a co-sponsor of that bill, as I have been for a lot of firearms legislation throughout my tenure. So we were listening. We did make some changes to try to make sure that it was affordable for these small businesses to do the work.
That's not true. Please don't read the Constitution, sir. Line up with your turn. I asked a question. It's my question.
Thank you.
What are we doing in education? Again, specifically, we are looking at we have a task force together to look at the, I'm not sure what's going on there. We are looking at particular areas to help funding for schools, everything from para-educators, professional development days that schools take a hit on, the teacher workforce, how do we bring them in, and the whole model. It is not an easy answer, so in the meantime, we are trying to vote and bring in as many dollars and make sure that we are keeping away. I can't tell you how many bills we kill to keep away from unfunded mandates that come through our committee. Because we are saying that if we are going to mandate the schools to do something, we need to be able to fund it. That is 60% of the battle right there, is trying to keep that away. The other is making sure that we are trying to strengthen our workforce and give the teachers the assistance and the help they need to be able to be successful. Be glad to talk to you further about that. Here, let me
On cost of living, one of the things we're doing this year, just to highlight one, is the governor's proposed, and I think both of our budgets will support, low-income energy rebates to make sure that we're helping families that have been hit by higher energy costs with direct support. We're also looking at measures to strengthen the working families tax credit, so folks that are on unemployment at low income would get more direct support and assistance to cover bills, whether it's energy bills or otherwise. So that's one of the measures we're looking at. I think we got the.
Let me just mention too that in regards to employment security, my bill that just passed the House waives all interest payments for those that had overpayments. We had overpayments that were done through Employment Security Department during the time of the pandemic, and then it took the department 40 months to figure out who they were, and that whole time they were being charged interest. We stood up and said, that's not fair, that's not just, we're not going to hit them again, and it waives all the interest payments that our families had to pay back.
I see 8 people, so maybe let's take 4 of them, and then the other 4, and then we cover everybody.
I was proposing one more oral and one more written because we're almost at time. So
mine's very important.
are you all going to be around after this to maybe chat with folks respectfully?
Yeah, I mean, let's just get a couple, if you can just quickly say your question so we can hear it,
Okay.
and then we can.
So if you guys heard that, if you just have a question, we can get through this, like everybody, a lot quicker. So no context, just question would be helpful. And I just want you to keep everybody else accountable to that agreement there. If you just ask a question, then we will get through this quickly.
I'm sorry, questions require context.
Not always.
Yes, they do.
Okay. So we're not going to get to everybody. That's just want to make sure.
I'm going to edit this a lot. But I'm a housing provider with my wife in Snohomish County. In the past 3 years, the cost of a handyman has doubled. The my interest rate has increased 67% on my little apartment, and my insurance has increased 35%. And yesterday I received notice that my real estate taxes increased 23%. That is 60 days notice for a 23% increase, and yet you have passed legislation that requires me to give tenants 180 days notice for a 7% increase or 60 days notice for a 3% increase. That is wholly inadequate. You stated that you want residents to feel the same consistency and stability as homeowners in their mortgage. I agree. They should be able to understand that a $900 dishwasher repair happens sometimes overnight, and that sewer backs up on the weekend, it costs $1,600 to repair. And as I experienced this last year, a sewer backup cost me $10,000 to repair. Tenants need to understand that. So what is the basis for a 3% limitation when it has no basis in reality?
So this is directed towards Representative Self-Ortiz. My name is Shannon, and my husband and I have been foster parents for 15 years and have cared for over 50 children. I'm currently the Region 3 rep, so I represent caregivers in your area. Multiple caregivers have reached out across the state and made attempts to meet with you and discuss our concerns around House Bill 1227. And you have said it is not being interpreted as intended, yet efforts to revise it were all shut down for the most part, except for the fentanyl one. So what it has done is created a higher standard for removal. My husband and I were up last night with a toddler with night terrors who's been returned 4 times and was left alone in a home with a dead parent. This is a very common scenario now with House Bill 1227. And we've reached out repeatedly saying, please come meet with us. Please come hear the stories of the caregivers who know how hard it is for bio parents right now to receive resources in order to get the help they need. I agree with the mom before in the clip beds. The resources are not there. We are booked out for mental health for months, and so we have a child who has experienced a death, and we still have no mental health services for her. So we're encouraging you to please, you can even come, there's foster parents all over the state who encourage you to come hold the babies that are withdrawing. Please come hold them with the broken bones that were up crying all night. They are being returned home. Otis Sorensen's father is not being charged. He left the baby, suffocated him, and put him in a bush.
Should we get a couple more questions?
Absolutely, but I want to know what is being done to revise House Bill 1227. Thank you.
Questions, please. I want to get as much as possible.
My name is Jim. I've observed cars with dark and scratched license plates, dark plastic tints over their license plates. They are unreadable, very hard to read, or the cars have no plates at all. How can you report a crime without a readable plate? Also, Amber Alerts rely on license plates. I talked to the police and was told that they will not follow up from callers reporting license numbers unless they see it themselves. It makes no sense to me. Without a clear license plate, cars without license plates should not be driving around. What is legislation doing to address this important issue?
Question?
I think we all know that homelessness has become big business for our government. The more homelessness we have, the more money our government gets.
Right.
But Snohomish County, against the people's view, bought 2 motels to be able to put homeless people in with no rules or regulations, meaning you could do your drugs and your alcohol and anything else you wanted while you were there. However, they found out that those hotels were already meth infected. So now they've been sitting for over a year because we don't have the money to clean them up to allow drug addicts to move in and infect them again. And it's been slated that $10 billion of our tax dollars will be invested in these motels to keep re-cleaning them to let people move in and do their drugs. I want to know, when is our government going to learn there's a thing called tough love? I am a recovered alcoholic addict. I think I can speak to this. If you keep giving addicts anything they want,
you're not giving them an incentive to clean up their act and become productive in our society. So I want to know, how much more money is Snohomish County going to take from us to fund these motels that aren't even in use?
Yeah. You want more? You guys want more? Okay.
Yeah, just to be quick.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
If you're not ready, I'll take
I'm ready.
Okay. You got it.
Okay. Whoops, I'm hitting the wrong thing. All right, sorry.
You're good.
Yeah, what I have to say is just basically it's about crime. And what happened to crime and punishment? Now we have crime and no punishment in way too many cases. The criminals are doing the crime and the public is receiving the punishment. Isn't it the duty of elected officials, whether it's state, county, or local, public safety? Which should be the most important aspect in your decision making. What role does politics play in the criminal justice policy making process? Are not legislative assemblies responsible for making criminal laws and deciding which actions are prohibited and which penalties are appropriate for breaking the law? Politics play a significant role in the laws that are passed, and they reflect the values and beliefs of the lawmakers who create them. That's all I have.
I don't know if my brain can handle.
Okay, yeah,
more
okay,
questions
got
before
it.
I can answer.
Okay, awesome. Sorry. Yep. You're good.
Thank you. I want to answer the.
Mike's not working.
Now?
Yes.
Okay, I want to answer 1227, the foster care bill. That bill simply says this, that 1/3 of our children were being removed from homes and returned in 30 days because there was not enough. This is how the bill came about. There was not any reason to keep them out of their homes. We just needed to help the families with resources. 30% that were traumatized. Can you imagine someone coming into your home and taking your children? And then returning them back in 2 weeks and saying, oops, yeah, everything's fine now. After you've been traumatized and the child's been traumatized. 1/3 of our cases. The bill dealt with not the cases of abuse or severe neglect. If you severely abuse a child or neglect, your child needs to be removed because safety is part of this plan for the state. Those are our children. This bill dealt with things like poverty. Is poverty a reason to come into your home and remove your child, or does the state have an obligation to provide wraparound and resource services for your child? It was trying to address a government overreach, and that is why both parties voted unanimous for this bill, including foster parents, biological parents. It passed off the House floor with unanimous support because we realized that we just don't have the authority to go into a home and take children away and traumatize them for the rest of their lives unless they're at risk of danger, which is the obligation of the state. So the bill does say that if your child, for example, in the situation that happened in Port Townsend, that child was taken away from the mom because the child had fentanyl in its system. That's the only part that applied to 1227, and the department removed the child from the mom. Now, who they placed the child with or when they returned the child home has nothing to do with that law. Nothing. Those are other pieces. The department has an obligation to then figure out who they placed the child with, all of that. The bill does not address any of that. The bill simply says, do a comprehensive approach, assessment. If a child is, and I'll give you this is my best example. We had a situation where a mother is drunk, passed out on her floor, and she has a 7-month-old. However, grandparents were there. 17-year-old brother was there, and they were all taking care of that child. The department does not have a right to go in there and remove the child because the mom is drunk. However, the drunk single mom who left the 2-year-old alone in their home for 2 days before we found them because she was out at a binge and left. I don't care if it was alcohol or fentanyl, you abandoned your child for 2 days, that's a different story. That is what the bill says, that if they're at risk, you remove them of danger or physical abuse or physical But you have to prove that they're in danger. You just can't go into someone's house and say, oh, you're drugged today, I get to remove your child. Or you're going to be poor next week because you're running out of money, I get to remove your child. So that's where the bill has been misunderstood. We are trying to keep government overreach from coming in and taking children and traumatizing them for the rest of their lives. But we are mandating that comprehensive approaches and resources be put in place, and that if the child is at imminent risk of danger, physical or abuse, that they get taken away. That's what the bill does, and I want to say, I appreciate all the foster parents, I don't care if they understand the law or not, that have spoken up, because we can't do this work without you. And I have sat with those children. Let me tell you, I sit with them every day in my school building. The children who are missing their parents because they've been taken away because their parents are poor and lost homes. The children that are in danger have been taken away because they've been abused and hurting. The children that have lost everything. I sit with those children. I know the pain they go through. And I've seen the generational trauma that occurs to our parents when children are removed. We have an antiquated child welfare law that's been in our books for 100 years that worked under a system that said, I can take your child away because I'm the state. And your legislators have spoken up and said, you've got to prove it because this is hurting families.
On Jim's question about license plates, we have a bill that would ban license plate covers so that you can't obscure your license plate, and we're working on another trooper academy to get more state troopers out there to enforce those laws. So appreciate you raising that. We are focused on that, and we're going to do more there. Other questions I've talked about, rent stabilization, we've talked about my support for public safety, so I'll pass it to Strom.
Yeah, I wanted to touch base on the purchase of the motels. So those motels that were, yes, they were absolutely riddled with fentanyl and methamphetamine contamination. Those hotels were privately owned when that happened. Those motels were being used for sex trafficking, being used for drug deals, and were not good places in our community. The county bought those motels. They're in the process of cleaning them up. We have, if you haven't heard, we have a labor shortage in pretty much every industry. One of the industries we have a labor shortage in is that kind of remediation. So they are at work right now, working with the Department of Health, both the state and the county, to make sure that they will be safe places for people to live and work. We are also, as far as we are working with the providers, those contracts have not been signed yet, to work with good quality providers like Catholic Community Services, with Volunteers of America, to get the services in those places, the wraparound services that folks have talked about, so people that are suffering from addiction will have those services available. Yeah, we want to make sure that they're not using drugs in those units. We want to make sure that there's going to be safety, there's going to be security. This is a model that has worked well in other parts of the state. This is a model that can work well in our community. Again, those were, and then to the issue around rent stabilization, there are a lot of kind of dials to work on in that bill, and I appreciate those ideas. Unfortunately, there you are. Unfortunately, the Republicans did not offer a single amendment to that bill in committee or on the floor of the House. If they want, we're trying to have conversations. I've sat down with the landlords, with the landlord lobbies. There are a number of landlord lobbyists down in Olympia. I've sat down with them to try to have them offer alternatives, and they're really not coming to the table to talk about the changes. It's frustrating to me when my Republican colleagues are just saying, we're not doing this at all, this is a non-starter. So this is my experience. You can look at the floor of the House and in committee that no amendments were offered in trying to change those dials. So still, it's in the Senate now. We still have some opportunities to look at some of those changes.
All right. The reality is we don't have any more time. So, no, I know. So I'm sorry. I have an agenda that indicates that this is done at 11:30.
They saw us standing here, they could have managed their response better.
I know, but there's also other ways to communicate with your legislators. You can do that in other public forums, like testifying on bills. You can also you can also email. You can also call them. You can speak to the LA. There's a lot of different ways.
Good.
I appreciate everybody.
They saw you guys.
Are you guys okay? I mean, it's okay, because to be honest, we only have this venue for a certain amount of time. We want to allow everybody to be able to speak with the legislators outside of the forum. I'm sorry you didn't come up sooner, or didn't.
No, you guys saw all of us here. They should have managed their responses better.
We're not sure if we can,
I'm not trying to project you guys, I'm just saying, like.
Let's get through it.
Okay.
Please feel free to leave it.
You don't have a question?
No, I do, but they don't have to answer mine.
Okay.
It's fine, I just want to put it
Okay,
out
you
there.
guys, thank you.
Okay, you guys don't have to answer my questions, but I'm gonna bring this up. You guys represent District 21, right? Well, what about Martha Lake, the unincorporated communities? What about us? There's a $50,000 research case study since 1999 that we've been trying to get in contact with our council members who actually go ahead and ignore us about our issues and our crime rates. And the fact that the sheriff's department doesn't even show up to our violent crimes in our Martha Lake Park. A 164th, I mean, hi, you see it in the news all the time, thank you to him. So I don't need your answer to this question because I already know what you're gonna say, but also show the data on the parents kicking the kids out for identifying how they identify. Show me that data, because I promise you, it doesn't actually happen as much as you're making it seem. Also, Marko, why is it so important to teach on the history of LGBTQ and whatever have you, rather than math, science, English? Literature? Because guess what? In the words of Morgan Freeman, all history is American history. So why does it matter? Why do we have to label?
That's right.
Why do we have to be the first black person or the first LGBT openly gay person? Who the heck cares? Let's just teach it. And why is it that this school district, Kamiak, in fact, I worked here since 2015, not here, but the school district, why the heck is it okay? No, they don't have to answer me. I know, but they need to hear it too. Why is it okay for kids to tell me that I deserve to be shot for being white? Thank you, I'm done.
Right on. Jason Moore, Lynnwood. There's a Lynnwood Times article about the PFD board in Lynnwood, Public Facilities District, the company that's managing the event center in Lynnwood. It's a city committee of volunteers. Vivian Dong was nominated to sit on that board, and the board and the city didn't like that. And apparently, you two, Senator, Representative, you didn't like it either. So you sent a letter to the city explaining why that they should remove her from a little committee in the city of Lynnwood. You guys are representatives to represent us, not to make up your own opinions. Your opinions are irrelevant. You're here to do the will of us, not your own. So why in the world is it acceptable for you to use your power and authority, which we give you, to interfere with a city's local politics? I would like an answer to that today. What is your reasoning behind that? And the Edmonds School District wants to come here and say they're not getting enough money. Why don't they teach the children how to read and write? Don't give them any more money until they produce results. Thank you.
Okay, just want to say thank you for running for these official positions and successfully run and win your election. My question is, how will you help, as part of the people of Mukilteo that's being repeatedly stated here, how will you help us reject small town value, quote unquote, whistle language, politics that's funded by Trump MAGA billionaire, And please explain to us how you will continue to hold your promise that you made during the election to extend progressive values and reasonable changes to laws that affects all of us, not just people who proclaims to be we the people of anywhere. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am a working engineer up in Everett. I live in Edmonds. And I want to bring light to a good news, actually. You know, I'm a Catholic, and I love it. I found a community here. I moved here 2 years ago, and I love this community. And, you know, Bill SB 6298, that is what I'm concerned about today. So when child abuse happens, the abuser may go to confession. And confession involves so many different rules. You know, Catholic, we have our own rule. It's moral rule, which is it's different from legal rule. And I want to ask how much research has been done in terms of understanding how if the priest realizes that he has to report to the police about the abuse, how that will have effect on the spiritual community, which I believe is just as important as mental health, physical health. I believe that is holding the community together, and I want to ask if the research has been done to calculate the effect. Thank you so much.
I'm advocating for equal shared parenting, where the child, in case of separation or divorce, spends equal time with each parent. Statistically, this reduces drug addiction and violence, which in turn saves the state money. Thank you.
All right, we got through all of them. You guys, it's up to you what you all want to do next. Okay, closing statements. Here we go.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody, obviously, for some very spirited debate. There is a lot of diversity of opinion in not only the 21st District, but across the state, particularly across the country, and that is what democracy is about. Right? That is what, when we go to the polls, when we have open forums like this, but again, if you have especially issues about legislation that's pending, please contact our offices. We have great staff to do outreach and to help answer some questions and maybe figure out some misconceptions that are out there or other. But we count on you to help us educate about what's happening in our community, throughout our community. As I think was obvious today, we have a lot of different voices. So to your point, when you say you are our elected officials, you need to do what I say. Well, the person sitting next to you has a very different voice, and that's why we have a representative democracy, and that's why we have elections. So I appreciate, again, the vibrancy of the discussion here, and I look forward to finishing up this session in the next few weeks. I think we're going to get some important work done for the 21st District and the state of Washington, and I look forward to having more discussions between now and November. So thanks so much.
I'd like to echo what my seatmate said. This is what we hear every day in committee. This is what we hear every day in Olympia, and this is what we hear here, the differing opinions that are occurring. Our job is to make sure that we hear everybody's opinion. Our job is to make sure we represent everybody in the state of Washington and all our residents. And the needs are vast, and the needs are great, and trying to do that in a way that protects your rights as a parent, as a gun owner, as an educator, it's a lot. And we are continually wrestling with all of that. It is not as simple as to say we take one opinion and ignore the others. We really have the work of really listening to everybody. And I've never seen such polarizing opinions as we have now. The struggle is real for all of us. So my hope is that we can continue to have these dialogues in a respectful way, that continues to listen to each other and not dehumanize each other, because that and only that will help us get across the line. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I will just add on to what my seatmates have said, that, you know, if I lived in a community and my representatives were voting for things that I disagreed with, that would be very frustrating. And I appreciate that you have the courage to come out and say that. I just want to assure you that the reasons I vote for the things that I do and the reasons I support the things that I do are also coming from really deeply held beliefs that I have. And that's why we have elections in this country. So the people of our community will have a chance to weigh in and say, which set of values, which set of ideas do we support? And in 2022, the voters in our community asked me to do this job for 4 more years. And I'm going to continue to do it to the best of my ability, continue to represent you to the best of my ability. And I know that some of the things that I will do will disappoint some of you. And that's why we have these meetings, to hear that sense of disagreement and disappointment, and to make sure we're listening to one another. We aren't always going to agree. I won't point her out, but my mom is in this room, and I don't always agree with her. But I love her, and we work together, and we find a path forward for all of us. That's why we live in this great, beautiful democracy. It also takes a lot of courage to stand up to someone in power and tell them they're wrong. And just this week, Alexei Navalny died in Russia for doing that very simple thing that each of us has an opportunity to do every day. So I say, God bless our democracy. I'm so grateful we have these opportunities. We'll keep talking, we'll keep listening, and to the best of our abilities, we'll keep making sure Washington State and our community moves forward. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you to everyone. Obviously, I don't want to repeat anything that was said because, you know, they're the ones in the positions and they're doing a great job. I want to thank everybody for coming out. I hope you all have a good rest of your Saturday. If you have any questions, please stick around. I have my cards. I know there's a couple of other Mukilteo and other city elected officials in the room, so feel free to chat around, and yeah, hope you all have a good one. All right.
Do me a favor?
Thank you very much.
Excuse me. Do me a favor? Yeah, of course. Just give this to Martha. Sure. Spend the time.
Yeah, is it, okay.
It's got a question.